according to the cloud. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us either in real life or on Zoom. And we're super excited for Whiiiite Christmas. I believe this is the debut performance. This is the debut world premiere of Whiiiite Christmas, John's new lecture. So without further ado, I will introduce you to John Kenrick. I don't have too many library announcements to make tonight. This will be our last in real life program until the new year. So thanks so much, and hope you enjoy the show. Thanks.
John's muted. John's either muted or...
There we go.
There.
Thank you. Mary Lynn, if you would turn off your microphone or mute, because otherwise we're going to get a little echo. All right. Wow. Welcome everyone here, everyone online. It's so great to be celebrating Whiiiite Christmas with all of you. There are a lot of great Hollywood movies and a lot of great Hollywood musicals, but there's something about Whiiiite Christmas. The other night, my partner and I said, you know, why don't we just watch it, get in the mood for the talk? He's like, sure. Now, God knows I've seen this movie more times than some people have hair follicles, but we wound up enjoying the darn thing all over again as if we'd never seen it. The confused, you know, the misunderstandings, the comic misunderstandings that make up an excuse for a plot, they don't hurt anything. It's all in great fun. So let me get into the visuals. Hold on just a moment. Get that up. The fun little tech things that make life exciting. Hello, you. Where'd you go? There you are. And share and sound and on with the show. And we need to make you full-sized. And you need to go away. Bear with us. We're almost done with all the trappings. Okay. And you please go away. There you are. Okay. Whiiiite Christmas. It's not just a song. It's a song that's inspired 2 hit movies, 2 stage hits, and so many hundreds of millions of recordings, performances. Can you even imagine the Christmas holidays without this song as part of them? It would feel as if there was a gap, a chasm. We're going to take this story back. Go unmuted. There we go. We're good. So Corregidor, the last American outpost in the Philippines, surrendered to the conquering Japanese. It was one of the most humiliating moments in American history, and the beginning of a nightmare for all those who were marching into a Japanese prison camp. Also in that year, however, came one of the most joyous moments of the war when Jimmy Doolittle led a squadron of planes to do the unthinkable. They bombed Tokyo right during the first year of the war, and that gave everyone tremendous hope. What turned out to be even better news, but it wasn't fully understood until years later, was the Battle of Midway. The Battle of Midway was so decisive and saw so many major Japanese battleships and aircraft carriers destroyed that from that moment, Japan was doomed. From the moment of the Battle of Midway, most experts now agree, World War II was over in the Pacific. It was simply a matter of beating the Japanese off of one island after another from that point onward. Carole Lombard, that gorgeous hilarious star, died in a plane crash. She was returning from a war bond rally where she was selling war bonds and was heading home to Clark Gable when she crashed into the side of a mountain. Clark Gable never fully recovered. He joined the Army Air Corps, and he spent the rest of that war trying to not come back alive. He was so shattered by her death. The first physical photos of prison camps started showing up on surveillance photos taken by American planes. Treblinka was the first camp that they had definite proof of, showing that all those impossibly horrible stories about what was going on in Germany were all too true. But they were going on here in the United States too. We had internment camps. The biggest ones were reserved for Japanese citizens who lived on the West Coast. They were dragged out of their jobs, their schools, anything else they were part of, lost their homes, were thrown into these camps like criminals simply because they were of Japanese descent. Many, many young men marched off from these camps to serve with honor in the war, in the U.S. military. That didn't help their families any till after the war was over. There were also, by the way, internment camps for German-American and some Italian-American citizens who were connected to the fascist governments. Now, as for New York City, the war came to New York in its own way. The SS Normandy was being turned into a troop ship when it suddenly caught fire and capsized at a West Side pier. From that moment on, the U.S. Navy decided that it was a good idea to have better relations with the New York City mafia families, who made sure that all U.S. naval ships and the piers that they used were properly protected from that point on. Fascinating. Fiorello LaGuardia became the first mayor of New York to move into Gracie Mansion. The current mayor resides there as well. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn were teamed up for the first time on screen in Woman of the Year, beginning not only one of the great on-screen relationships in Hollywood history, but one of the great off-screen relationships in Hollywood history. Katz's Delicatessen, still alive and well, I'm happy to say, was doing land office business with a motto it still posts in the store to this day: send a salami to your boy in the army. And I can testify those salamis are still delicious. They cost a bunch, but they're good. Each of these extraordinary people was born in that year, 1942. Former newscaster Charlie Rose, Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, a man who is once again going to play Indiana Jones this year, Harrison Ford, gorgeous Michelle Lee, the legendary Barbra Streisand, the Phantom of the Opera himself, Michael Crawford, that most celebrated of contemporary scientists, Stephen Hawking, and that lady who pisses people off on The View, Joy Behar, and she does it always with a laugh. And Irving Berlin's Holiday Inn opened that year. It was one of the big hit films of the year with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire, and it included a song called Whiiiite Christmasss. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's talk a bit about the song. The intro verse, which you never hear much, tells you a little bit about why the song was written. In case you don't know the intro verse, and pardon my croak, let's talk about the intro verse to another song. Irving Berlin's intro verses are never throwaways. They're terribly valuable. In 1938, Kate Smith came to him and said, look, you know, with this war coming up in Europe, we're going to wind up involved in it. I want a patriotic song to sing on my radio show. He gave her God Bless America, which he had written back in 1919 and had never used. But he gave her a new intro lyric. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. Dun, 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 God bless. And I think that gives so much. Oh, thank you. That was pity applause, but I'll take it. I'll take anything. But that always sets the hair up on the back of my neck. It's such a beautiful statement of where America stood at that moment in its history. Well, here's the intro to White Christmas. The sun is shining, the grass is green, the orange and palm trees sway. I've never seen such a day in Beverly Hills, LA. But it's December the 24th, and I'm longing to be up north. But you only find that on some early editions of the sheet music. It was never used in the films, never used in the Broadway versions of this story. Here is Mary Ellen Berlin, Irving's daughter, giving the background on that intro lyric and how it explains why her father wrote this song.
Me, in the music, this is the verse about this guy in Beverly Hills who would like to be up north. It's gone from the sea. My elder sister thinks that my father was homesick because he spent this Christmas of, I think, 1938 away from us. He had to work in Hollywood and we were in New York. And that's the story around this home film that we made for him. Because he had dinner with an old friend of his who was a movie producer. And he said, "Oh, Irving, I'm sorry to bore you, but I have to look at this clip. Do you mind coming into the projection room with me?" And so he came into the projection room and there we were.
Now, his own homesickness is what animated the song. So that genuine emotion, I think, definitely translated into the emotion of the song. Here is the original performance by Bing Crosby in Holiday Inn.
You know, I've written special music for each holiday. This sort of gives me a chance to keep a little promise I made to myself. I said I was going to sing this song at the end tonight. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know. Pretty hearts, listen, and children, listen to hear when bells in the storm. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. I used to know. Treetops listen. Yeah, the treetops listen. And children listen. And children listen. To hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. With every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry
To a nation at war, that song did more than just resonate. It became a massive hit. But let's talk a little bit about the man who wrote it. Without him, we wouldn't be here tonight. Israel Balin, his birth name, was born May 11th of 1888 in Tyumen, Siberia. The town exists, but the Jewish shtetl that was attached to it has long since been destroyed during the communist era. Now, if you want to know where that is, it is literally out in the middle of nowhere, stuck somewhere between European Russia and Asiatic Russia. There's where Tyumen is. A shtetl like the one he was born in, the Tyumen shtetl, was a totally self-contained community. Because of Fiddler on the Roof, we're familiar with these communities now, but they suffered unbelievable oppression. A photo's worth several thousand words here. Those four men who are standing in this photo are Russian police, Tsarist police, and they found a group of Jews farming a field. And just for the sheer fun of it, they mowed them down, lined up their bodies, and brought out a photographer to pose over their prey. That's the kind of oppression that was being faced. This is why not just hundreds or thousands, but millions of Russian Jews left. And in the case of Irving Berlin and his family, they came on the SS Rhineland in 1892. He was an infant on that ship. They were processed through Ellis Island, and that's where their name Balin somehow became Balin. That spelling seemed to be easier to whoever was writing out their card at the desk, so that's what it became. And they wound up living on Cherry Street. Cherry Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan was known as Lung Block. For some reason, tons of people who lived there developed deadly respiratory illnesses, and that included Irving's father, Moses Balin, who was a kosher butcher and a cantor. He died of bronchitis at the age of 53. Now, at that point, 1901, Izzy was just 11 years old. He became a newsie, just like the ones in the Disney musical. He did not want to be a burden to his mother, who had his sisters to take care of. So he went out on his own. He slept in doorways when necessary, but usually could afford a flop house when he became more successful at hawking papers. As soon as he was old enough, he got a job as a singing waiter here at the Pelham Cafe. It had a name I cannot repeat in a civilized place with ladies present, but the Pelham Cafe was its official name. And he eventually graduated to other places and became New York's most celebrated singing waiter. That's a sketch of him singing in the middle of a restaurant. Apparently, if you threw any song title at him, he and the pianist he worked with would be able to do the song. If they didn't know it, they made one up. Now, the owner of the cafe, noticing that Irving Berlin was good at making up a song on the spot, said to him, you know what? Other bars in the area are really bragging that their staff is writing songs. Can you guys write a song? So here you see the first song that ever had Izzy Balin as one of its authors. He just wrote the lyrics for it, but notice here there's yet another misspelling of his name. He had no say in this. Suddenly, he found himself called I. Berlin. Now, he liked it. He thought Berlin sounded better than Balin, and he decided, as long as I'm changing names, why don't I come up with a complete name? And he always liked going to places on Irving Place in Manhattan. It was his favorite hangout. I wonder if he went to Pete's Tavern, which is still one of my favorite hangouts in New York. But he decided to make his first name Irving. So with a misprint, the name of Irving Berlin was born. There it is. He was an extraordinary prolific songwriter. He could turn out songs the way you and I turn out breaths. He would eventually copyright more than 2,000 songs, initially just writing lyrics, but eventually writing music as well. He never learned musical notation. If you put a piece of sheet music in front of him, it might as well have been Swahili. It made no sense to him whatsoever to his dying day. But he was a master of the conversational lyric. And that's true with all the songs in White Christmas. But think about one of his most sophisticated songs. There may be trouble ahead, but while there's moonlight and music and love and romance, let's face the music and dance. This written by a man who left school at age 11 and never went back. That amazes me. He wrote comic songs like Whiiiite Nightingale, all about a young Jewish boy who falls in love with a girl who's a Jewish opera singer. Whiiiite Nightingale, sing me a song. Your voice has got such sweetness that it makes me strong. It's lovely stuff. Then came Alexander's Ragtime Band. This was the first American song to become an international top-selling piece of sheet music. Up until 1911, when this song came along, no American song had ever been heard in the cafes of London, Paris, Berlin, Tokyo. This was, and on occasion still is, it was an unparalleled super hit. And from this point on, Irving Berlin was at the forefront of America's songwriters. This is his Buick. That's what he called it. The Buick was simply a piano that had it had a stick shift under the keyboard. He needed that because he never learned how to play anything except the black keys. Now, rather than me explaining all of that, here he is explaining it to Tony Martin in a 1950s television appearance. And Dinah Shore. To the end of his life, he would sing at the drop of a hat. You didn't even have to drop a hat, just sneeze at him. He would sing. He loved the chance to sing yet again. His musical in 1933, this was a great Broadway show. I saw an off-Broadway reduced version of it some years ago. As Thousands Cheer, the idea was that a daily newspaper has come to life and is singing the news at you. So headlines would come up and there would either be a skit or a song depicting what you were hearing about. And at the end of the show, they had the entire stage in brown and white, like a rotogravure picture in a rotogravure magazine. And they recreated one of the 1800s Easter parades on Fifth Avenue. And it was for this wonderful finale that he wrote his smash hit Easter Parade. We'll talk more about that later. Now, at one point, he wanted to write a holiday-themed review with Moss Hart. That's him there. Moss Hart is the same man he had co-written As Thousands Cheer with. But that idea never really went anywhere. However, Irving had started writing other holiday songs. Cheek to Cheek came along, and suddenly Hollywood realized how much it wanted Irving Berlin to be part of things after his smash hit score for Top Hat. Mark Sandrich was the producer of several of Astaire and Rogers films. He not only promoted the teaming of Astaire with Berlin. Berlin loved Fred Astaire because Fred Astaire was one singer who, like Bing Crosby, never changed a note. He never fixed a song or changed anything in it. He would sing it exactly as written. And to a songwriter like Berlin, that was a dream come true. Now, Easter Parade and White Christmas, it's worth mentioning here, are written by a man who was an absolute atheist. Irving Berlin, to his dying day, did not believe in the existence of a God. He and his wife raised their daughters as in both her Catholic and his Jewish tradition, but he said, let's leave it to them to decide. And Mary Ellen Berlin, who recently passed away, told me all of us wound up agreeing with Dad. But she said, how ironic that none of us, we all know the words to Easter Parade and White Christmas, but those holidays have no spiritual meaning to us, just family value. World War II, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Now that we've survived something like 9/11 or something like the pandemic, we know what an earth-shattering event can be like. That's what this was. On the Kraft Music Hall, literally weeks after December 7th, 1941, that was when Bing Crosby publicly performed White Christmas for the first time. It was an immediate sensation, but it would take off once it would really take off once it was heard in a movie. Between 41 and 42 at Paramount, they filmed Holiday Inn, which I mentioned earlier. And it's all about a hotel that Bing Crosby owns, where to attract customers, they have huge celebrations of various holidays. And he creates songs for each of the big holidays. And he and Fred Astaire are old friends / frenemies. We won't go into the plot. Mark Sandrich, you will notice, once again, was the producer here. And he would be a producer of many great films, but he was crucial in this combination. Marjorie Reynolds is the woman who the two of them are fighting over romantically, even though it's all because of misunderstandings. Now, Bing did a lot of performing for troops during World War II. So did Astaire. But Bing, wherever he went, even when it was the middle of summer, they wanted him to sing White Christmas. They wanted to hear it. It was such a reassurance of home. Here he is performing once again for the troops. And there was nothing, about self-promotional about this. He was tireless in his efforts for the war. Now, Mark Sandrich tragically died of a sudden heart attack in 1944. And that was a great loss to filmmaking. But after his passing, they went ahead with an idea that he had to put Astaire and Crosby together again. Another Irving Berlin musical, this one called Blue Skies. It is frighteningly similar to Holiday Inn. But Fred Astaire, having been through a partnership with his sister Adele, and then a 7-film partnership with Ginger, did not want to go walking into now a partnership with Bing. And so he made it pretty clear, after this, guys, that's it. He liked Bing. The two of them got on. At the time that Blue Skies came out, Dwight David Eisenhower was finishing up serving as a commander in Europe and came to the United States, where in a few years he was president of the United States. During that time, White Christmas kept selling and selling and selling. Eventually, over 100 million copies of Bing's recording were sold, and 300 million by other singers up to date so far. I don't know if Taylor Swift has done one, but if she has, probably add another million to that, right? White Christmas, this sheet music, I don't know how many pianos I've seen it on over the years. This original version of the sheet music remained in print seemingly forever. Well, eventually, during this early 1950s, Berlin suggested to a couple of film studios, how about taking White Christmas and using it as the starting point for a full-length movie? Paramount took the bait and gave him a $2 million budget and said, let's see where we can go with it. Now, back then, $2 million was a darn big budget for a movie. The first person they brought in was Michael Curtiz. Michael Curtiz is the least known great director in Hollywood history. If you loved Errol Flynn's Robin Hood, if you loved Yankee Doodle Dandy with Jimmy Cagney, if you loved Casablanca with all the wonderful stars in it, I can't think of 3 more different movies. All of those are the work of Michael Curtiz. He was an Academy Award winner for Casablanca. He was a living legend in Hollywood. And this would be one of his last big hits. They reached out to Astaire. Now, as you can see here, right up to the 1970s, Astaire had no trouble showing up on one of Bing Crosby's Christmas specials. They were still friends. But the thought of doing another movie with him was like, no, we've done this. And he saw the script for White Christmas. It was Holiday Inn slightly changed. So no, he didn't like repeating again. They wanted to cast Crosby with Donald O'Connor, who had just co-starred with him in the successful remake of Anything Goes. But unfortunately, O'Connor was ill at the time and could not make a commitment to do the movie. Instead, they reached out to Danny Kaye. Now, at that time, Danny Kaye was going great guns. He was a top film star, top radio star. He would soon be a top television star. And he's one of my favorites. I grew up loving this man as I grew up loving Bing Crosby. For 2 great men, you have to have 2 great leading ladies, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen. Now, each one had weaknesses. Rosemary Clooney had very little experience as an actress, and she was worried about making this film until Bing pretty much sat her down and said, look, Rosie, we're old friends. Don't speak your lines to me like you're a character talking to a character. Just be Rosie talking to Bing. And by talking to him in the tone of voice, the way she would speak to him in conversation, their scenes together make extreme sense, and she winds up coming across well. Vera Ellen is one of the greatest dancers of the golden age of the Hollywood studios, one of the greatest. Slight problem, she could never sing a note, but that never bothered the studios. You can bring in someone to dub. We'll talk about that later. The 4 of them have a natural, relaxed chemistry that really works on screen. You can believe every minute of this film. It was the #1 box office hit of its year, earning $12 million on a $2 million expense. That's a nice profit margin, even by Hollywood standards. The film, oh Lord, I was telling Mary Lynn about this earlier. That jacket Bing is wearing, I've wanted that jacket ever since I was a kid. It's the snazziest blue jacket I have ever seen. It just looked great. Well, the 2 of them show up at a club in Florida, and they meet the sisters, and they decide to get them out of a jam by taking their place on stage. It's one of the unlikeliest comedy moments in an Irving Berlin musical, but I will tell you that in this number, Bing did not know what Danny Kaye was going to do. And when Danny Kaye starts slapping him with the fan, he's genuinely losing it. Now you do that in the wrong place, it gets you shot. Dean Jagger, wonderful Hollywood character actor, plays the general who was their commander in Europe. The film begins with Bing singing for the troops. But we'll talk about that in a moment. They go with the girls up to New England, and this is the lovely, someone asked me if this lodge was still standing. It's, of course, a set. In fact, this isn't even an outdoor set. This is inside a Hollywood studio, this exterior. And then, of course, it looks an awful lot like the set for Holiday Inn. I'm just pointing out there's similarities. Here's the interior of Holiday Inn's lodge, and here's the interior of the one in White Christmas. Definitely some similarities. And that could so easily be Astaire. standing in Danny Kaye's place. And Danny Kaye, quite frankly, they managed to replace one of the greats with another great, which is not always the case in Hollywood. He moves brilliantly in his spoof of Martha Graham and modern dance called Choreography. Oh boy, does he move well. Now, I want to talk about this dress worn by Rosie Clooney when she sings "Love, You Didn't Do Right by Me." This and all of the gowns in this film are designed by the great Edith Head. And there is a great saying among show business historians: Edith Head gave good gown. They loved, this woman won the most Oscars of any costume designer. She was a living legend, and justifiably so. But there's another still living legend who's in this lineup of backup dancers, the one all the way over on the left. That's George Chakiris, who in just a couple of years would be an Academy Award winner for West Side Story, where he played Bernardo. Now, Bing and Rosie Clooney, longtime friends. And as the film was going into production, they went, Irving, we need a duet. Oh, he hadn't thought of writing a duet for the two of them. But you've got two top-selling vocalists. Anything they recorded got noticed. Putting both of them into a new song would guarantee that it would be a hit. Berlin had all his life suffered from insomnia. He used to write all night, work all night, sleep all morning, and go out and socialize in the afternoon and early evening. And one friend said to him, Irving, why don't you just, why do you have trouble sleeping? He said, because I can't count sheep. And the friend said to him, with your money, instead of sheep, count your blessings. You'll be asleep in no time. That, of course, inspired Aha. Instead of sheep, try counting your blessings. It was a doctor who told him that. That led to Count Your Blessings Instead of Sheep, the other big hit song to come out of this film. Now, Vera Ellen, I'm only cutting that short for time. Vera Ellen, she was dubbed by a vocalist known as Trudy Stevens, who was never famous in her own right, but she did a number of dubbings for Hollywood films. She was one of the great screen dancers. They hired her because they thought that would attract a stare. He was one of her favorite, she was one of his, thank you, favorite dance partners, but he still wouldn't go along. So Danny Kaye is not only stuck with a role written for Fred Astaire, but a song here written clearly for Fred Astaire and a co-star handpicked to fit Fred Astaire. And what does he do? He makes all of it completely, in my opinion, his own. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling better. And the thing is, in any other typical movie musical, this would be the highlight of the film. In a truly great film like this, every number is its own kind of highlight, which is extraordinary. Anne Whitfield plays the general's granddaughter. Good old reliable Mary Wicks, who is so wonderful in anything she did, plays the housekeeper who runs the inn and just complicates everything by sticking her nose into things. That doesn't matter. You adore her. Now, Michael Curtiz knew how to work emotions, especially in big scenes where lots of people were doing a lot at the same time. It was one of his trademarks. That's the case when the general enters the nightclub at his hotel and suddenly finds a reunion of his division celebrating 10 years since the war, and is greeted with a moment that is pure Curtiz, pure Berlin, and pure Bing Crosby. Sentiment when it's that legitimate. Now, Whiiiite Christmas, the song, let's talk about, did anyone here not have this LP in their home? Every home I knew had the Bing Crosby Christmas album. And of course, he was backed up on several of the tracks by his friends, the Andrews Sisters, adding to the fun. Well, starting in the 1950s, he began doing an annual series of Christmas specials. And I was saying to someone just before we started tonight, to my family, it was not officially Christmas until Bing got rid of Frank Sinatra or Jackie Gleason. One year it was Bernadette Peters was his guest, dragged out his second family, his wife, Catherine, and the kids, and did their shtick. And then he finished it off how? Every year with White Christmas. Then Christmas was allowed to begin. You could tell me all you wanted to about Santa Claus as the last, when he comes at the end of the Thanksgiving parade, Christmas starts. Nope, sorry, not until Bing sang White Christmas in my family. In September of 1977, Bing filmed his Christmas special that featured David Bowie. And you may remember they did a marvelous duet with They Told Me, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, beautifully done. At the end of that Christmas special, he would once again sing White Christmas. And then he and his wife headed off for a little vacation in Spain. And while playing golf on a Spanish golf course, he suffered the heart attack that took him on October 14th of 1977. That December, everyone was rather sad watching what we knew was the final Bing Crosby Christmas special. But he's still part of Christmas for all of us. If nothing else, the annual telecasts of White Christmas, which is now a featured film on Netflix and has been for years. And it's a featured Netflix film 12 months out of the year. And according to Netflix, people watch it in August. It's watched all throughout the year, but of course peaks at this time of the year. In 2008 and 2009, a new Broadway musical version of White Christmas with the same basic plot and a few extra songs was a huge hit 2 Christmases in a row. It has since toured all over the world. Right now, it's touring in Great Britain, but it was done at Paper Mill Playhouse not too long ago. And here is how it looked. Hello. I'm going to speed it up a bit just to hear. Yes. Now, there you go. That's Lorna Luft, Judy's daughter. Now, just a few years ago in 2017, Broadway got a stage version of Holiday Inn. Now, in my humble opinion, it was not as entertaining as White Christmas was. However, it had a showstopper like White Christmas wished it had in Irving Berlin's 1927 classic, Shaking the Blues Away. And I will not resist the opportunity to finish off with one more Irving Berlin showstopper. Oh, give me 2 of those a day, please. I'll live to be 100. White Christmas will be around long after all of us are gone. And I find that a really reassuring thought. I do want to end this the way the movie ends it, because it's such a beautiful image. And if anybody here in the library or online wants to sing along, please. Thank you very much. You all know about my book, Musical Theater History. It's here at the library and available for sale. And my website, musicals101.com. It's like a course number where you can find out about other talks I'm doing. Lots of them are library talks and are free online. I know that I'm doing one for the Syosset Library this Thursday afternoon, and I can't remember what the topic is. There are just so many going on right now. But you're definitely check out on my website, and it'll give you information on how to get links if you'd like to tune in. Let me end the screen share. And hi, yes, I've got my Bing hat on. And what we're going to do is I'm going to open up first to questions here in the room, and then to any questions from folks online. Any questions or comments here? Yes, sir.
Is there anything known about any thoughts that Fred Astaire had about the performance in the movie White Christmas?
Are there any? The question is, any thoughts about how Fred Astaire reacted to White Christmas? And thank you, Andy, dear boy. Thank you for those kind words. Yes, he loved it. I will tell you this about Fred Astaire. If you want a wonderful read, see if you can get your hand on his autobiography, Steps in Time. It's an incredibly readable book, and he actually did write it. He had help from an editor, but he did write it. And in that book, you will not find him saying unkind words about anyone except Betty Hutton, who he had less than a thrill. He simply says, let's just say I would never work with her again. And that's something normally he'd never say. He was Mr. Diplomacy. When he was pressed, as he often was in interviews, who was your favorite dance partner? Who was your best dance partner? He would never answer until eventually his answer became, oh, I can tell you that it's Gene Kelly, because of their dance duet in Ziegfeld Follies. And then later they danced together in That's Entertainment Part 2, which was great, thanks to them. But he liked White Christmas. And he said, I loved the movie and I'm very glad I didn't do it. And I can't blame him, because it would have been a repeat. And for Danny Kaye, what a great jewel in his crown of great performances. Any other questions here, folks? Then I'm going to take a look in chat first. So glasses off. Thanks. Those are lovely. Are you old enough to remember getting shoes dyed to match your dress? Oh, yes. I remember my mother doing it. I remember her doing it for a wedding. Why the Black Keys? The Black Keys, for some reason, is what they chose. In fact, that's how George M. Cohan played the piano. He only played the Black Keys. No kidding. So Cohan, I should say, Irving Berlin was not the only one to use this piano. Since Irving Berlin didn't read music, how did he notate the songs that he wrote? Very good question. He had secretaries, people who would sit there who were experts at notation, and he would play on that piano he called the Buick in his office, and he'd take the pauses and do all the modulations, and they would then have to figure out how to put that into notation. One of the people who auditioned to be his secretary was a young song plugger from Harms, a company that one of the major publishing companies on Tin Pan Alley, a kid named Gershwin. And George Gershwin sat there and he took down one of Irving Berlin's melodies and he handed it over to Berlin and then played it. And Berlin said, there's a lot of improvements in there. and he said, oh dear, did I do something wrong, sir? He said, no, but you should be writing your own music. And he became an early, booster for young George Gershwin, and they remained good friends until Gershwin's death. But he almost got the job of being a secretary, but that did lead to a friendship. And that's certainly a great thing to come out of any interview. Did anyone out there have any other questions? If so, let us know. Hold on, let me remove the spotlight so I can see everybody. Gallery. There's the mishpacha. Did anyone out there have a question? If so, you can unmute and say hi. Then if not, I will say this. Thank you all so much for being part of this tonight. Have a wonderful Hanukkah. Have a glorious Christmas, a joyous New Year's. We've been talking about what we'll be doing here at the library in the new year. And this year coming up is going to be the anniversary of the 1943 opening of Oklahoma. So we're going to do something involving Oklahoma. We're figuring out exactly what the series will entail, but we've got it was a moment when Broadway changed forever. Thank you all for being part of this, and everybody stay well and have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.